Okay, so I had this amazing opportunity to interview one of my friends who's also a sports medicine physician. She's my doctor friend. And this is how I came across this story. I was on Instagram, and in her stories, I think it was like your trainer or somebody posted that, hey, look at Eliza Pierko. She's a physician and she was running the Berlin Marathon. And she had to stop at like mile 20 to administer aid to someone who went into cardiac arrest and gave them CPR. And then, despite doing all that, she still made her personal record for the Berlin Marathon, which is unreal. So I saw that story and I was like, oh my God, Elisa, what the hell? And I think I sent you a message. And then a couple days later, it was picked up by different like big women's groups and women's running groups on Instagram. And I was like, this is getting like some major traction. So very graciously, Dr. Pierko has decided to have this one-on-one interview with me. And really, this is the first time I'm hearing the details because literally, Elisa, I texted you and you got back last night off of the plane from Berlin. And I was like, can we set up a time that I can do a little interview with you? And because you're, I don't know, an amazing human being, you said yes. So I would love to introduce Dr. Eliza Pierko. Dr. Pierko is a sports medicine physician like me and Jeremy. She and I did fellowship the same year. She was at the McNeil Loyola Fellowship, which is an amazing fellowship. We can never stop saying great things about Dr. Aaron Lee. He's amazing, and the whole group is fantastic. And is still practicing there as faculty and is an absolute gem of a physician and human being. Real quick, when I was like looking up your bio, I don't know if you've seen this, but if you haven't, I wanted to read the top patient comment on your Loyola page. And it said, if more doctors were like Dr. Pierko, medicine and healthcare would have a much better reputation. I hope you know what a truly remarkable physician and human being she is. And could not possibly agree more. And I think this story will bolster that as well. So Dr. Pierko, thank you so much for being with us. This is awesome.
Oh, Julie, thank you for all the kind words and thank you for having me.
Yay.
Excited to see you and talk to you today.
So you're a runner. You've been a runner for a long time. Was this your first marathon? Was this your 100th marathon? How did you get involved to going to the Berlin Marathon? And then let's talk about what happened that day, which was 1 week ago today.
As you said, I've been running for quite some time. I look at my relationship with running as love-hate relationship. I did have a couple of years where I just simply did not run, but I started running in elementary school and I ran track, I ran cross country, but it was never a long distance running. And I considered that only after I moved to States 15 years ago. And that's when I ran my first half marathon. So Berlin was my fifth marathon. I did a couple of Chicago marathons, but Berlin was my second international marathon. So leading up to this race, I gotta say that I had very hard 20 months of running and just health overall. When I was on safari in South Africa in December of 2022, I had a fracture dislocation of my right ankle. So I had something called trimal, which is for people not in medicine, this is a trimalleolar fracture of the ankle, where pretty much all the bones in the ankle get cracks in them. So I had surgery abroad and then I had to have another surgery. So last 20 months were tough. I was non-weight bearing for a total of like 2 months and lost a ton of muscle mass in my right lower extremities. I finally went back to running in March of this year. As you mentioned, my coach, I trained with them for my Indianapolis marathon in 2022. And so we got myself, ready for Berlin in about 6 months, which
that's crazy.
From not running at all to being able to run it. My goal was to just get uninjured to the start line and then to the finish line. So I didn't have any time goal in mind. I usually, like when I race something, I want to go after personal best or a certain time, but not this time.
I totally forgot the part about that you had a horrible leg fracture that required 2 surgeries. Like you were saying, like, oh, from going to not running to running. You're going from not walking to running in this period of the past 20 months. Do you still have hardware in your ankle?
No,
so the second,
okay. Yeah, the second surgery, we actually took it out. So.
That's insanity. Okay, gearing up for this marathon, you have your coach. You're like, hey, I just want to healthily finish. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to be in Berlin. And this was kind of like a landmark for Berlin. Tell me about why this Berlin Marathon was special.
So it was the 50th anniversary of Berlin Marathon. It's one of the majors, which at some point in my life, I had this idea that I want to run all the majors. Yeah. So I was excited to be able to get my second star out of 6. And also, it's been 16 years since I've been to Berlin. So I was really happy to go back and just travel through Germany.
That's amazing. Okay, so now you've been training for 6 months with your coach. You're ready to go. You've landed in Berlin. Now it's race day, which was a week ago from today. So that was September 29th. Okay. Now tell me the story. I haven't heard the details. I'm so excited.
So I was very, very excited about the day, but the day clearly didn't start and didn't go as planned, as nothing, nothing perfect in life, right? Sure. And the day definitely was far from perfect. We'll get to the start line pretty early, gave myself enough time. Berlin was going for a world record of participants. So 58,000 people registered. God. And we ended up staying in line for like 40 minutes to get into the porta potty. Oh, no. Which made me late for my chorale start. So I felt like I started this marathon actually from woods adjacent to the chorale, which was fine. I was surrounded by thousands of other runners who didn't make it on time. Then I spilled water on myself. So I was like, crap, okay, now I have no water until I get to the water station. I was like, there's nothing else that can go wrong, okay? I just need to get to the chorale and I need to start running. My coach gave me a plan with some pacing and I was supposed to start nice and slow, which I did. But then I trained, I know metrics, right? I'm Polish, so like I grew up on metrics, right? But I didn't train on metrics. I trained my paces by miles. So there was another difficulty because I was like, how am I going to run those paces if I'm running actually kilometer marks? And I figured out I'm going to pick up my pace later on. 8 stations, the water stations were a disaster. They were serving water in plastic cups, which I saw so many people tripping, falling on that. I didn't like that part for sure. No. It was really crowded. Once I finally had settled into my pace, I was flying. I was like, this is my day. Nice. I feel amazing. Weather cooperated. I feel really good. My nutrition, everything is on point. And I was just flying up until mile 21. As I was running, I noticed someone down to my left. That person didn't look like they slipped, that person looked like they were just lying down and something was going on. It just didn't look right. So I was like, okay, this is the moment. I got to stop and check on that person. And that's what I did. So as I approached, I saw some other people around. These were bystanders and someone was already on the phone. So I just confirmed that they were calling for EMS. At that time, that runner who was lying on the ground, he was still breathing. He wasn't talking. I checked for his pulse. And I was still feeling carotid. So I was like, okay, fine, he's breathing. And then about 15, 20 seconds later, he actually stopped breathing. And I lost that pulse that I was feeling on the carotid. And external reps trying to talk to him. And he was just unresponsive. So in that moment, I had a couple of other people. I just shouted that he's in cardiac arrest and I was going to start compressions. And he was at that time, he was on his side. So I just flipped him over and I started doing compressions, and like literally 30 seconds earlier, I was running. So as I was starting doing the compressions, I went too fast. So I had to slow myself down. I was surprised how much power I still had in my arms, and I was able to pull like the first cycle. And then I had another bystander who switched me for compressions, and he was okay doing some rescue breaths. He did a couple of those too as I was compressing, and we had so many people. Some of them didn't speak English. It was really difficult to coordinate. And at some point I just like stopped and asked them who's in healthcare. I appreciate that everyone wanted to help, but just having bystanders looking, giving us directions, and everyone was going at something different. Keep going, stop. And I'm like, okay, someone needs to run this code. And I decided it will only be me. At that time, one of those bystanders told me that he was the nurse, and then the other one was a paramedic. Perfect. So we were lucky, and we had a retired physician as well. So in the end, it took about solid 3.5 to 4 minutes for EMS to arrive with a defibrillator. We put the pads on the runner, and the first thing that I've noticed was VFib. So he was in VFib arrest. And then the tricky part, when you run abroad, the defibrillator is not in English.
No, so I didn't think about that.
So I didn't think about that either. All the commands were in German. But he got a shock. We got an ambu bag. After the first shock, he converted. Last thing I remember from the monitor was actually those P waves before every QRS. And I know.
That's good.
and the heart rate of 138. And I was like, okay,
Okay.
we got him back. And he started breathing. I think I took another maybe 15 to 20 seconds there. I thanked everyone when I was like, he's in safe hands. I'm
Right.
just going to get up and finish my race.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have so many emotions and questions. One, was there ever a moment that you were like, I'm in a good pace right now. I know this guy is on the ground and I could probably help them and I probably should, but like, I guarantee there will be somebody else that'll help this person. There are thousands of people passing by this human being. Was there any moment of, I would love to just keep going?
So there was maybe 1 second, maybe 2 seconds that, that PR
Mm-hmm.
somewhere at the back of my head. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm flying. But I never thought about
No,
like not stopping,
of course.
But it was like this brief moment. And I'm like, I'm on such a great pace. But then there's a person down. And I'm trained to do that,
Yes.
I'm a human being and I want to do that.
Yes.
And I have the skills to do it. So clearly I'm going to stop and help them. But there was maybe 1 or 2 seconds that I was like, I'm going to lose my PR, but for the good reason,
And we'll get to that at
Yeah.
the end that you didn't. I mean, I kind of buried the lead in the beginning, which is unreal. So, okay, a Cliff's Notes version of what you just said. So you roll up on this guy, you see him like on the corner of your vision, and he doesn't look like somebody who just like, ow, I fell down and hurt my knee. Like this person is not moving. They are laying on the ground, motionless. So like that was the scene, right?
That's correct. So that's what I saw with the corner of my left
Yeah.
eye. Whether I'm on the sideline
Mm-hmm.
covering football or any of the endurance events, that's what I'm waiting for,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like I'm there if they go into the cardiac arrest.
Right.
So like I keep playing those
Scenarios.
theaters
Mhm.
and those scenes in my head, and I am ready. So far, I never had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
While I was working, which I'm like, okay,
Good.
I'm ready, but I didn't have to use my skills. That's fine.
Yeah.
I was checking my AEDs working, was
Mhm.
make sure that I know that my athletic trainers know what to do and
Mhm.
all that. But that's where you have the team of trained healthcare professionals and you have your AED and like you good
Mhm.
to go, right? It's a bit different when you actually participating, right? I'm
Right.
like, I might be the nerd who is running and just anxiety level is
Yeah.
higher up because I'm always trying to spot someone who may need help.
Yeah. You just
For
can't turn that part of your brain off all the time.
I would still buy if someone slips and falls and I ask them if they need any help, but I never had to resuscitate anyone, right?
That's a really great point of we are so trained and we get so much practice in being the one in charge on the sidelines or like in a situation where you're expecting that to be a possibility. It's like if you were an ER doctor and you go to the ER and you're expecting people to come in with emergencies, but or
Right.
like when you're on the sidelines, you're expecting to potentially see a head injury, a cervical spine injury, an arrest. You don't want any of those things to happen, but we've done years and years of training to prepare ourselves for this. And we have a team that we've already communicated with before anything started to say, okay, here's all of our roles. Here's how we're going to communicate together. You didn't have any of that. You were just some lady running in a race in a country. You don't even speak the language. That was the crazy
Correct.
part. I guess one quick question, because literally I just had to re-up my BLS, my CPR training. When's the last time that you completed CPR training?
It was 4 years ago.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
It's rusty.
Yeah.
And especially if you haven't had to do it, because it's more so like when we were residents in the hospital and you're working in the ICU or something, like in a controlled environment where there's a million other people around you who know how to do it too. That's the other part that blows my mind is that there were folks that, and maybe it's like a moth to a flame, when someone who is in healthcare, like yourself, a physician or a nurse or a paramedic or someone who knows CPR, which could be anybody. That's really the moral of this story, is that you don't have to work in healthcare to get CPR certified. There are resources like the American Heart Association does it for free in a lot of cases to be able to learn how to do this so that you can save a life too. You don't have to be Eliza Pierko, sports medicine doctor extraordinaire, but how fortuitous that there were so many people to help you, because doing CPR alone, I've never done. I cannot imagine how exhausting that would be on top of already having run 21 miles.
I was surprised that I had that much strength still, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I was able to actually do those compressions. And when I went back and checked all the stats from my watch, it was the only time where my heart rate actually went above 160.
Oh, geez.
There was that window
Yeah.
where my pace went down to 0.
Mhm.
And that's when my heart rate was sitting around 185.
That's insane. Well, it makes sense. It's adrenaline and it's very difficult. If anybody who's done CPR before, that's why you can only really do a round or two of it before you have to pass it off to somebody else. So it was great that there were people there that understood how to do it, that could relieve you and go through that process. It sounds like the whole thing was what, like 5 minutes? Or
I think even less than that. I think when
wow.
I go back and check my watch again, it's like closer to like 4 minutes and 20 seconds.
Imagine if you didn't stop. And who the heck knows if somebody else would have, or how long it would have taken for this individual. If you're going to go into VFib, which is an unsustainable arrhythmia of the heart that can happen for a lot of different reasons, and it happens not terribly infrequently when people are doing long distance running. I think you had quoted it like the general rate is about 1 in 100,000. That there is a physician who is there the moment that you stop breathing and that you stop having a pulse, and then immediately says, okay, I'm gonna jump right in, we're gonna start CPR. Even a minute or two of that person laying on the ground in VFib, not perfusing, not having blood going to all of their organs and not oxygenating, their likelihood of survival, even just after a brief period of time, goes down significantly, especially when an AED is not in place or when people don't start CPR immediately. So, how perfect that it was like you were there, you saw him, you ran through the protocol of, is he breathing? What's his pulse? Okay, those things are gone. I'm going to be his heart and lungs for him now. I don't know. It could have been another situation where you come up on somebody who had not been checked on in a few minutes, and that would have been a worse outcome. So I don't know. I just am hammering in that if you are trained in this and you don't have to be a doctor, and you recognize when someone needs help and you know what to look for, whether they're breathing, whether they have a pulse, and that they're responsive. And if they're not, you start CPR immediately. Like, that's probably a major reason why this person was able to be shocked into a sustainable rhythm. And I just wanted to really hammer that into our listeners that you don't have to be a doctor to do this. You don't have to have any medical training whatsoever, but you can learn these skills and practice them. And you could be the person at your kid's soccer game or at the airport or walking down a street to get your coffee, and just be able to be the person to sustain that person until someone else comes. And real quick, I wanted to focus too on the important part of, it sounds like one of the first things you did was make sure that someone was calling for help.
So I could have called myself, but there was already someone on the phone. And that was pretty much the first thing I checked,
Mm-hmm.
whether someone was already calling for the ambulance. One look at that runner, and I knew that he was going to need an ambulance.
Oh.
And then what are the odds, right?
Yeah.
He arrested in front of me, like in front of my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no delay to CPR.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was feeling the pulse, and then I wasn't feeling the pulse. And it took me maybe like 10 seconds to try to sternal rub him to get some response from him. Every minute counts.
Mm-hmm.
I think statistics talk about like 7 to 10% less chances for surviving.
Yeah.
Every minute from the cardiac arrest.
Oh.
If he was going to make it, I think that was like the perfect scenario.
Yeah.
We were there and we started compressions right away.
Immediately, which is so important. Again, CPR is very difficult and it's not for forever. You need to have a backup plan, making sure that somebody had called emergency services, because your skills are immediate life-sustaining care to this person. I think it was really smart. A big part of my CPR training was no touchy before you tell somebody that you need help. So you're doing CPR, the EMS comes. What was that moment like when they had the pads on the guy and you were just waiting for whether or not the shock was advised? Or also you were like, I don't know if it's advised or not, it's insurance.
So it wasn't actually EMS who did that part.
No.
It was me and the paramedic and the nurse.
How was
So
the AED there?
EMS brought that. It wasn't even an AED. It was like big ass defibrillator.
Like paddles, like you see in movies.
I mean, it had adhesives, you know, but like it was way bigger than our regular AED. Sure. When they came, we were the closest to the runner. So honestly, they put that defibrillator to the runner's right side, and then they gave us the pads.
Oh.
And we did the work. So like we put the pads on him, right? And then I was facing actually the defibrillator, so I saw that VFib on the monitor.
So were you like, okay, this is shockable, this might work?
Yeah,
I'm sure.
That's exactly what I said. I was like, it's shockable, it's VFib. And then there was like a big smile on my face because it was shockable.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I just asked everyone to back up a little bit and not touch him. The shock was delivered because 2 seconds later, he was in sinus tachycardia.
That's crazy.
I was staring at the monitor, all those POAs before QRS. I'm like, okay, we did it.
The most beautiful thing you've ever seen.
I know. It took me a couple of seconds, to compose myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I think it's time to just try to go and run it,
Oh God,
and
that's crazy. So you were running a marathon, you had to run a code, and then you went back to running a marathon.
And I said it again out loud. I'm going to leave him,
I'm gonna go
with you guys in safe hands, and I'm going to finish the marathon. And the paramedic was like, yeah, just go.
Oh.
And I went.
Okay, don't tell me twice. Zoom. Yeah. No, I'm not trying to be like, you left him there. It's like, clearly you left him with paramedics. Like, you did your work. Got to go try to keep towards my personal best and ... At that
time, honestly, it didn't even cross my mind, okay? I wasn't looking at my watch at all. I didn't know how much time passed by. Sure. It felt like forever, but it also felt very fast. I got up and I started crying. Oh. I was bawling. I couldn't compose myself. My arms went numb. I was like, how the hell am I going to finish it? I looked at my watch and my heart rate was still in the 180s. After not running for 5 minutes, I was like, how is that possible? And my pace, I gotta take a nice deep breath and try to get through it. And so my husband, who met me at a couple of spots, and I saw him, and he has it on video as I'm like running, approaching him with straight face, and then I start crying. Oh my God. And I tell him that I just CPR'd a guy, and I wasn't sure if I could even finish the race. And he was like, okay, maybe try if you feel like it. And I just left him hanging there. Like, I didn't even answer. I was like, okay, I'll go. And I left. Bye. And that's exactly what happened.
Do you have this footage?
I think I may have it. It's in Polish.
I don't care. I'll interpret it. I don't give a crap. That's amazing.
I just left him hanging there.
It sounds like you probably talked to him for like 10 seconds. So it was like, I just had to resuscitate somebody. I'll see you in a few miles.
Just think, okay, I just need to get to the finish line. And I didn't drink. I didn't take my gels. Like, my nutrition was not on point anymore.
Just like, I'm just going. I want to be done.
The finish line is close. And so I just kept going. But I kept just thinking about this guy, thinking about whether he's going to make it, what just happened. It's like, how is it possible that I just did that and I'm back up and running? And then I was about maybe 0.6 miles away from the finish line. I saw the Brandenburg Gate at the end of the marathon. And in that moment, I actually looked at my pace. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a possibility that I'm still pushing a PR. That gave me more energy because I sped up even more. I only have about 0.6 mile left. I can go and try to run faster and get my PR. And that's exactly what happened, Wow. I barely remember that last, stretch. And I crossed the finish line, started crying again. I looked down at my watch and I was like, okay, I PR'd.
That's amazing.
So that was a very, very emotional race, and clearly something that I've never done before. Right after crossing the finish line, I got my medal and I walked up to the medical tent to gather some information. I told the physician at the medical tent that I just CPR'd a guy at mile 21.5 and whether they had any information, but they didn't have anything available.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like he went directly to the hospital, which would make sense. You and I have covered the Chicago Marathon before, I'm assuming. I know you've run it. Right. You're probably not going to bring somebody in cardiac arrest there unless it's like at the finish line and that's the first place to go. Those people are going to go directly via ambulance to the hospitals. You mentioned before there's a women physician running group that you are a part of, a community, and that there was a moment at the finish line with those folks. Can you tell me about that?
The women physician running group, we call ourselves POWER, and it's POWR, Physician Open Wings Runners. And it's about 1,500 of us. Some of us were running Berlin Marathon. There was a group about 10 of us. We always support, like, no matter where we are, we always track our runners. We text whoever's running, keep sending some good vibes, especially the closer they get to the finish line. So after I crossed my finish line, I glanced at my phone and I had a ton of texts from them, which of course made my heart very happy. We get so much support from overseas because those ladies were up at like 3-4 in the morning, tracking how we're doing. First text that came through was from my friend who is a pediatric intensivist. I texted her back that, yeah, indeed, I did get my PR, but also I CPR'd a runner. And she knew how traumatic and how emotional. She talked to other of our friends from the same running group, and I started getting messages one after another, all all of the women physicians, very supportive and asking if I needed anything. And they even got me a psychiatrist. There was a psychiatrist who actually was running as well.
My
And
gosh.
she crossed the finish line a couple of minutes before me. So, and we both PR'd. So we actually met at the personal best finish line,
Nice.
waiting for to ring our bell. So I got a big hug from a psychiatrist. She's actually from the Chicagoland
Oh,
area, and
awesome.
she's a good friend. But they even got me a psychiatrist at the finish line.
Just in case. Well, yeah, it is incredibly traumatic to go through. I feel like when I would be a part of a code, when somebody would go into cardiac arrest in the hospital as a resident doctor, like afterwards you had like a debrief about, is everybody okay? There are opportunities for support and to talk it over. And all of a sudden you're in a foreign country with just you and your husband, having gone through one, like a physically extremely taxing experience of just running this marathon, but then also like an extremely emotional experience too.
Actually, I did cry and talked to one of strangers who asked me to take some pictures of him.
Yeah.
And so I did. So he took some pictures of me with my medal. And we started talking, and out of the blue, I just started bawling again. And so he just thought that I was really happy about being done with the marathon. I mean, it's very emotional. It's just like this unloading
Yes.
of all those emotions you went through. And I started crying, and he asked me like, what was going on? And I actually told him that there was a cardiac arrest, and I CPR'd a guy. He was like, "You saw it, right?" I was like,
I
"No,
was doing it.
I did I actually did the compressions." He hugged me and he thanked me for doing that. And he assured me that I did everything I could in my power and I left him in safe hands. And I didn't know that I needed to hear that from a stranger. Running community is amazing. Honestly, I forgot about that part. But yeah, there was a Mike who took my pictures and then he gave me a hug and told me good job.
Oh, his name's Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, wherever you are, you're an angel. Yeah.
Mike lives in Berlin.
Okay. I don't know how to say thank you in German.
Dankeschön.
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 I should know this. There's a song about it. I've seen Ferris Bueller. This is unreal. Elisa, I can't even. Thank you so much. I love when I was texting, I was like, oh, it's going to take us like 10, 15 minutes. We're 45 minutes into this story. Again, like anybody could do this. You can save a life. We had a really great episode with Sarah Lorenzini, who's the rapid response RN, about just this, what to do when someone is choking or somebody is in cardiac arrest, with quick tips. But really the answer is go get certified. This could happen to anybody. It is so important when you have somebody in this situation that can spring into action because they feel comfortable, because they've had the training. A layperson who's never had CPR training would maybe try, but maybe not do it very effectively. There's a difference between CPR and high quality CPR. That actually came up in my CPR training with my amazing instructor. There's a whole Spotify playlist you can do that are like perfect CPR songs because they're between the 100 and 120 beats per minute. The other one is Beyonce's Hold 'Em, which that's what's in my head all the time when I'm thinking of doing it. Long story short, it is in many cases free to be trained and to be certified, and you could be the person that could help save a life. The main things would be, if you see somebody down, first off, make sure that somebody is calling for help and be very specific. You, lady with the cool shoes I'm looking at right now, can you please call an ambulance? This person needs help. The other thing that I was taught in my CPR training too was just to tell people, like, I'm CPR certified. I'm trained in CPR. Like that, like universal, people like, cool, you're in charge. And I think it was really smart that you were saying everything that you were thinking. I'm doing this out loud. No one knows what's in your head. And if you're the one in charge, it's smart to be like, I'm just saying the stuff that I'm thinking and doing right now.
Definitely learn CPR, and any CPR is better than none.
Yes.
But definitely high quality CPR is crucial here. And then it's a team sport. I mean, just everything we do in medicine is a team sport. Like I wouldn't be able to do it on my own. And I was glad that I actually had some trained professionals, bystanders who were right there in the moment and that helped me with a code. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do it myself for 4 minutes. It's just impossible.
Absolutely. But you did, because you had help, but you still did it. And then you ran 4.5 more miles at an insane pace and made a personal best in your 5th marathon after having a completely broken ass ankle just 20 months before.
Yeah,
that's a lot of things, Elisa. Well, we don't have any exact follow-up on what happened to this person. Clearly, we're not here to violate someone's privacy and their rights. That's not the point of this. It was just to tell a really cool story. You've been trying to dig to try to figure out what had happened. What have you heard?
So I have reached out to the Berlin Marathon organizers a couple of
Mm-hmm.
times, but haven't heard back anything yet. But I've been following German media and came across an article in one of the newspapers a couple of days ago, and it was a really, busy day
Mm-hmm.
during the Berlin Marathon. Actually, 5 runners needed CPR,
Oof.
which is definitely not a world record you were trying to achieve,
Nope.
Berlin. And as per that article, everyone survived. So, although I don't have a closure
Mm-hmm.
and exact follow up on the runner that I helped, it seems like there were no fatalities.
That's great to hear. And who knows? It's been 1 week since this happened, and you just got home last night, so we may see some more resolution moving forward. But regardless, I think this is an unbelievable story, and just shows a lot of tenacity and a lot of just your humanity and your kindness. And you can't turn off that part of your brain if you're that kind of person. Like, you're just a helper, and you were there to help, and you were there in the exact perfect moment that you were supposed to be. I just think it's lovely, and I'm so glad that you were able to share that with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to the story. And you're the first person that I actually talked through all that. And I put it in writing for my women physician running group
Yes.
because everyone wanted to know, but I haven't talked to anyone about it.
Well, I'll probably make this into like a longer YouTube clip. And then if you're hearing this, then we probably release it as a bonus episode just because I think it's such a great story. Can't say enough great things about you, Eliza.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
Julie. Means a lot.
Okay. Goodbye.